Hey everyone, my name is Anne and welcome back to the channel. For anyone else who's watched my videos, I know it's been a minute since I have filmed. My camera ended up actually having a problem and wasn't working, so I apologize for the delay. Turns out if you have a Rebel T7 Canon camera, sometimes you just have to take the whole thing apart. But I've done that, we're fixed, and we are back and up and running. I hope you guys have all had a wonderful holiday season, and we are just getting ready to start that brand new year with some brand new content. Today we are going to be talking about reptiles once again. The original video that I had planned next on the channel was a cage review, but unfortunately my cages are back in New York, so once I get back there I will go ahead and do that review. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about some other aspects of reptile keeping, specifically things that I think are kind of cons to keeping reptiles. Alright, so for today's video we are going to be chatting about some cons of keeping reptiles. I've been keeping reptiles for a number of years now, and just as there are so many pros to keeping reptiles, there are so many things that I absolutely love and adore about them, there are a couple of cons which, if you're thinking about getting into reptiles or you maybe have one of your own, I definitely think that these are a couple things that, at least for me, I have found to be cons. Helping us out with this video today is going to be my male Rosybud. His name is Sonoran. He's super chill, super down to earth, anybody can hold him. He's such a great guy, so I figured we'll bring him in today to kind of add a little to the video. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get right into it. The first con on my list would have to be revolving around my geckos and lizards, which are specifically my insectivorous animals. My number one con for keeping reptiles, and the thing that drives me wild, is having to keep feeder insects. Obviously, it is a staple of their diet, so it is something that I must do. But for me personally, I cannot stand keeping and housing and feeding crickets. Luckily in the reptile industry there are a bunch of different feeder insects to try, and I have had my fair share of them, with dubia roaches being my normal number one feeder that I would go to. Fortunately, with some of my animals, they really enjoy being able to hunt for their food. They're not super great tongue feeders, and even if I keep dubia roaches or mealworms in a bowl for them to go get, I want to make sure that they're able to get the proper amount of nutrition. So crickets tend to be the best feeder insect here in the United States for that task. I know in like the UK they can feed off locusts, which I would love to try sometime, but for right now, if I want a feeder that's got good good prey drive, so they're running around, that's something they can go hunt and chase, crickets are going to be the number one. Now, why do I say that they are a con? For me, it is the noise. Male crickets make a chirping sound, which I'm sure if you don't know, because you don't keep crickets, you probably think it's like a beautiful fireside, you know, a bonfire with the beautiful crickets in the background. No. The feeder crickets that we have, at least here in the United States, or at least the area that I am from, up in the north, these crickets are so annoying. It's not like a cute little like it's like it drives me crazy. I hate it. And for me and my tanks, I often have very intricate backgrounds, and there's a bunch of places, especially in things like driftwood, that the crickets can kind of wedge themselves in, and then the males just sing their heart out, and they sing their heart out normally at like 1 in the morning, and it wakes me up and it drives me crazy. You also might be asking yourself, well, why don't you just tongue feed all your animals? You can tongue feed off the males and then you'll have no problems. While this is the case for some of my animals, my leopard geckos, for example, are all tongue fed, or at least both of them are. I do tend to feed them the males because I can make sure that they do get eaten. But oftentimes with my other animals, like my water skinks, tongue feeding is not on the table for them, especially since the adults are wild caught. So they don't really take super kindly to tongue feeding, which I would love to do. So they would prefer much rather to get their own food with me not being involved. So when I can feed off male crickets to animals that will eat it, I definitely do. But when I can't, I put them in the tank and pray that they eat all of them. My second con for keeping reptiles on my list would have to also be centered around something that's not necessarily reptile related, could be more skewed toward keeping fish, but I cannot stand the sound of running water. I hate it. It drives me crazy. I think I have a little bit of like PTSD because whenever I used to hear water like running, it would always be one of my tanks were leaking, which has happened a couple times with a couple 10 gallons. And it's always like right before I'm going to work or something and then there's water everywhere. A whole big shebang, a whole big thing. It's super annoying. I've had it at least happen twice on me throughout the over a decade now of keeping fish, but every time I hear water running or rushing, I hate it. I hate the sound of it, and it's very common in my fish tanks because I do have hang-on back filters, but I do have the Sulawesi water skinks and they do have a water pump that is running to keep the water fresh for them. Anytime I hear it like dribbling or dripping out because it isn't like fully in the water, I have to change it. I have to go fix it. I just cannot stand the sound of running water, which I think is just like a me thing. This is just like a me con, because I know a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, no, when I hear water, like it's so relaxing. I just think once you've had a fish tank leak on you, it's not a relaxing sound. And I hope one day to be able to design a pond or something with waterfalls so I can get more used to the sound of the water. And I have no fear of water, by the way. I love to swim. It's not like I fear like drowning or something. I just cannot stand the sound of like filter water running, or for example, my roommates have this water fountain for their cats and it's awesome because their cats drink a lot more, which is great. But as soon as it gets like low and I can hear it like dripping into the basin, ooh, it like scratches a part of my brain that I'm like, I need to stop it. I need to stop it like now because a fish tank is leaking, even though it's not. So a little bit more of a fish-oriented con, but if you do have any semi-aquatic reptiles or amphibians that like to have a nice dripping feature, chameleons for example with needing dripping water, ooh, it would be such a problem for me. It would be such an issue for me, which for me would be a con. My third con for reptiles, which mostly has to center around my tortoises, would be their caging setup. So I live in the north, so I can't have my animals outside 24/7, even though I really wish that I could. Half of the year, or at least a good portion of the year, they have to spend inside. And while I try to make their cage as enriching as possible, and I try to give them as much outside time as I can, they do get moments where they get bored and they'll kind of wander around, they'll kind of scratch on their tank walls a little bit, or their enclosure walls, because it's not a tank, it's a L-shaped box that I had custom built for them. So it's really big and everything, which is awesome, but whenever they start scratching and digging around, I'm always like, oh girls, I wish I could just keep them outside 24/7 all year round. That would be the perfect ideal home for them, which maybe one day if I happen to move out of the north, or just eventually get them like a super large cage so that they can wander around and not and have even more enrichment. I've definitely done some more unique things to help them kind of combat these times in the winter when things tend to be a little boring. I've gotten them different type of feeders, different type of enrichment items, different cage decor, and those do definitely tend to help kind of get their sillies out. I also let them walk around outside so that they, not outside like outside, but outside of their cage, and this does help as well, but reptiles are reptiles, and if you know tortoises, they're super stubborn, so if you try to move them to do something else, they're like, no, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do this. But definitely by implementing a couple other things, it has helped. But yes, they do scratch on the walls of their enclosure, and sometimes the sound just drives me crazy. Drives me crazy, and then they're telling me, they say, we need outside of the cage time, so inevitably they get it. So you could say that they've trained me to let them out of the cage more. But you do have to be careful if you do plan on doing things like this. Make sure that your house is safe for the reptiles. There's nothing that they can get into that they could hurt themselves. Make sure there's no areas they could go that they could hurt themselves. Like if you have stairs, make sure there's like a baby gate or something to block them off. And you also have to be mindful if you live in the north like I do and it gets cold, it's the snowstorm behind me, that they're not out of their cage too long, because you do want to make sure they have access to those heat lamps and lights and UVB lights so that they can go ahead and get the necessary temperatures that they need. But giving them outside of the cage time and enrichment time is super important, and I highly recommend getting some food enrichment, as it can be a really fun way for them to eat their dinners and have an interesting enriching time as well. But that's just one of my cons, because them scratching at their cage drives me nuts sometimes. My fourth con for keeping reptiles would probably have to be centered around the carnivores, so specifically my snakes and my insectivorous lizards. They have some of the worst smelling poops ever, and they stink so bad. And if you are a snake particularly, Emmett and my green tree python are more of the culprits of this. Sonoran here is perfect and would never. But when my green tree python goes to the bathroom, oh man, does it stink. It is so, it smells so bad. And I've had her checked and everything, so she doesn't have any parasites, she doesn't have anything gastrointestinally wrong with her, the poops are well formed, and everything is good that you need to know about caring for your animals. But carnivores, just the food that they eat, what they have to digest, especially the snakes, you know, digesting fur and bone and things like that, man, it really does come out the back end being super stinky. Same thing with my lizards that eat, you know, insects and only meat. Their poop is definitely smellier than my other lizards, who can sometimes have those fruit mixes, the Pangeas, the Rapashis. Still smelly, but definitely nowhere near as smelly as like my water skinks or my fire skinks, for example. And then I think the best smelling one would probably be my tortoises, because they are herbivorous, so they don't have nowhere near the smell, because it just smells like digested grass and hay and lettuce. But yeah, when a snake decides to go to the bathroom, which is why I'm holding Sonoran after he has had a long enough time to eat and digest his food so he doesn't poop on me. Whenever a snake poops on you, let me tell you something, you will know. And I think indigo snakes are a really big culprit for letting it loose whenever you're holding them. Hasn't happened to me, thankfully, but yikes. And then also, sometimes reptiles will use defecation and urination as a form of defense. If they think that you're trying to harm them, they'll let it go to try to get you to let them go, which can be sometimes, I found, a trained behavior, a trained response. If you have a snake, for example, and you take them out and they know if they poop on you, then you'll put them away. Sometimes it can become a trained behavior. None of my snakes luckily have this behavior. My corn snake had it for a little bit, but then it was kind of like you kind of just have to let them go and continue to just spend time with them, because then you just reinforce that behavior. But none of my animals have that. They just stink when they poop, and it can be so smelly. You can be so smelly. But I love them regardless, and I'm happy that what they're eating is being digested and coming out the other end, because if it wasn't, then we'd have other problems to deal with. Probably my fifth and final con is not really even a con at all. It's that once you get a reptile, people tend to treat you a little bit differently. I've got a lot of like, ew, you keep snakes. Ew, you have lizards. Nobody ever has a problem with the tortoises, because tortoises, who hates a tortoise? Come on. But I do get a lot of that in my own personal life, and it is nothing against them. I love them. I would never ever get rid of them. But a lot of times it does lead to a lot of difficult conversations of like, how can you love something like this? How can you be around them? They're so creepy, they're so slimy, they're so whatever. And I definitely know that, like, from speaking to people in the reptile industry and just in the reptile world itself, it is something that we unfortunately have to deal with. A lot more common than, like, if you just have a dog, because so many people have dogs. I think the only other group that can, like, really relate is, like, the people who have cats, because I feel like a lot of people are like, ew, you have cats, or ew, cats are gross, or whatever. But they do tend to make us little targets of people who want to complain and want to, you know, put labels and stereotypes on people who keep reptiles, because honestly, from what I've seen in this community, it is so broad, it is so vast, there are so many different unique species, you know. One species that you might not be a super fan of, somebody loves, they know everything about them, they have dedicated themselves to learning about their care and bettering their care. For me, I think the big example would be like, I'm not really into bearded dragons, but I know that people love bearded dragons and love to give them bigger and better homes, and it's so, so awesome. For me, it's the skinks. I love skinks. I want to just continue to breed the ones that I have bred in captivity, the water skinks, and just push that forward. But I think people have this view of like, oh, you must live in a basement and you must like not shower or whatever if you have reptiles, which I just found isn't the case. Normally, there's bad eggs in every community, so not saying it doesn't happen, but I just think that it really brands you, and I definitely see it as something that a lot of other pet keepers don't have to deal with necessarily. But I'm sure like every animal enthusiast has their own thing. I don't know what they say about people who keep birds. I like birds as well, but I don't know what they say about them, like the people that keep them. But people who keep reptiles are often branded in a really negative light, and that really bothers me. And I hope through watching my videos and doing a couple more animal highlights in the future, you guys will continue or start to love them just as much as I do. And if you have species or animals that you are interested, please let me know. I would love to learn more about them and maybe feature them in a future video. Those are just 5 of my quick cons of keeping reptiles. Of course, this video is done in a kind of a lighthearted way. Obviously, all these cons are super, super minor to me. I wouldn't have my animals if they were something that was a super big con. For example, I just mentioned birds a little bit ago. I think I am allergic to tree nuts, so while I really, really want a bird, I would have to figure out like how I can train them and give them treats without necessarily having to interact with tree nuts and things like that, because I am allergic. That would be a con that I would have to really work out. But nothing with my reptiles is ever anything that's big enough to where it makes me shy away from them. It's just the basic care, different things that you have to figure out and kind of go forward with. But those are just a couple of the things that I have found to be as cons, if you will. I would love to hear if you have any cons that you have found with your animals. Leave them in the comments below. And with that said, thank you so much for watching this video. Go ahead and subscribe if you'd like, and like the video if you did find this content interesting and or exciting. I cannot wait to see you guys in the next video. I'm not quite sure what the next topic is going to be about while I'm back here in Ohio until I return to New York, where then again I will do a cage review for you guys. But other than that, I hope you have a super awesome day, and thanks for watching. Bye! that they love, some species that other people hate. There's my dog barking at a delivery truck. That's good. Cancer-free, but still going after it. Should we put this as a blooper segment? Should we put it as a blooper segment? Because, listen, these guys don't bark. They don't make noise at all, except some species of geckos, which are super cool, and look it up. But they don't bark. They don't make noise. They're just lovely. And people be hating. I don't like that. Okay, she stopped. Anyways, from what I've seen in the reptile